What would it take to get me to believe in a God? What evidence would be required? That's an interesting question. So let's do this.
You know, atheists say that the reason they don't believe in God is because of the lack of evidence. You know, they don't see the evidence that leads to the existence of a God. So my question is what would it take for you, an atheist, to believe in God?
Well, I can only speak for myself. But as far as I'm concerned, what's required is scientific evidence. I'm not going to believe in the existence of anything, whether it's strawberries, my cell phone, or your God, without scientific data, without a reason to suspect that it exists that makes faith unnecessary. That's what I require.
Do you need God to come down and show himself before you and say, I am God, and so forth?
Well, that'll certainly do for a start. But which God are we talking about here? What if this deity shows up and says, I am Ra, sun god of the Egyptians? Well, okay, great. I'm going to assume you're talking about the Abrahamic God, but that's not the only God that humanity has posited. So God showing up and saying, I am God, well, that's a start. But there's certainly more that we need to investigate, even if that happens.
Or maybe something else. That's why I'm asking. You know, sometimes the answer varies from one to another. So really, that's basically it. I'm just curious to see what type of evidence you would require to believe in the existence of God.
Well, let's suppose, just for a moment, that somebody shows up claiming to be God. And maybe they even do some magic tricks, miracles in front of us. Okay, great. But what evidence do I have, what reason do I have to suspect that that is not a magic trick, that it's not sleight of hand or something, or that it's not some elaborate light show or something? I mean, we can do some pretty amazing things. I've seen magicians, maybe Penn and Teller, do some pretty amazing things that I don't know how to explain. So even if a god or someone claiming to be a god shows up, well, that's no evidence at all. I need more than that. What we would need to do is to get this person, this creature, into a room where we can eliminate outside influences. I suppose that would involve stripping them naked, but I wouldn't really want to do that. But even so, I suppose we could, I don't know, pat them down, use metal detectors, something. But we would have to find some way to eliminate any outside influences, any way that we could have data that shows up that is not clearly just something that this person is doing by themselves, without tricks, without any kind of sleight of hand or anything. I mean, maybe we'd, chain their hands up and tell them, okay, now make a bowl of raspberries on a stool, show up out of nowhere. Just poof them into existence. If you're a god, that should be no problem for you. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, that's just an example. I'm sure there are a lot of kind of tests we could run, a lot of different kinds of detection devices we could use to try and make sure that they aren't doing anything but using magical powers. But even then, we do have a problem of how do we distinguish a god from some other kind of magical being. I mean, this is assuming that magic exists, that magical beings exist. I covered this in another video. How do we tell that what we have is a god versus, say, a tree sprite or something? I mean, I don't know how to do that, unless we have something like omniscience or omnibenevolence or any of that stuff, but those are logically impossible. Omniscience and omnipotence and omnibenevolence cannot exist, logically speaking, and even if they could exist, we could not prove them because there is no way to detect infinity. Just cannot do it. So there's no way to prove that the Abrahamic God exists, and any other god could easily be confused for, like I say, another magical being. So there are a lot of different factors that would need to be eliminated, would need to be detectable, all kinds of things. And even if I believed that what we had on our hands was a god, well, that doesn't mean I'm giving that god my loyalty, because that god may well be, quote-unquote, evil, or maybe a complete rat bastard in some way, maybe a creature that I would fight to every fiber of my being. Or it could turn out that they're a really nice person, and yeah, they'd get my loyalty, or at least my friendship. I mean, that's possible. I think it's pretty unlikely, given the gods I've heard described. Most of them are right bastards in one way or another. Most of them have committed acts that if a human committed them, well, we'd have them in jail if not on death row. So, yeah, I think that the question of whether or not a god exists and how you would prove it to me, or how that god would prove it to me, that's almost minor in some ways. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter to me whether it's a god or not. If what we have on our hands is a complete asshole, well, that's kind of a problem. Just saying.
So anyway, that's it. So what would it take for you to believe in God?
Money. You'd have to bribe me into it. Okay, just kidding. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance. Catch you like the plague. Please take the time to rate this video. And hey, if you dig what I do, subscribe. And please visit my Zazzle store, where you'll find all kinds of BionicDance merchandise. Every time you rate, an angel loses its wings.